Hello and welcome to Take the Black, your fantasy and sci-fi podcast that dives deep into the world of Westeros, A Song of Ice and Fire, Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon, and Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, occasionally other stuff, but right now we're all about House of the Dragon all day, all night long because season 3 is on. I am one of your hosts, Daniel Roman, the editor of winteriscoming.net, and I am psyched, as always, to be here with my co-host, Marq Nettles of House of Nettles. How you doing, Mark?
It's a lot of good television on. It's a lot of good TV on, and I've seen things I like. I've seen things I didn't like, and I'm ready to talk more about some TV right now.
Yeah. I hear that. This episode, so we're here today to talk about the 4th episode of House of the Dragon's 3rd season, the halfway point. And yeah, after the 3rd episode, which was like a tight bottle episode all about Rhaenyra's rough first days at work, this one sprawls back out. It gets to a few new locations, one new location, one we saw before, but looks very different now. And yeah, there's a lot to talk about with this one. So where do we even start, Mark? Do we just dive right into this thing? Where do we go from here?
I do want to say this felt like a mid-season finale.
Really?
It felt like if you told me it ended right there, we were gonna like an old TV show where, hey, this is the end of the fall season. We're gonna pick back up in the end of winter, early spring type thing, almost.
That's fair. I could see that. It's got the cliffhanger that works for that sort of thing, even though it's only 4 episodes deep. So it's kind of interesting how, these condensed seasons can still have feelings like that, where it's like, is this a mid-season finale? We've been watching for literally a month, but it does kind of feel like it. I could see that.
Yeah. But you know what? Hopefully they pick some things. A lot of story they're going to get to in this episode, and a lot they're going to have to get to the rest of the season. So it's going to definitely be interesting how this is going to be handled.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest question I have after this is, what are they going to do with the rest of this season? There are a few big road marks we know are coming, like the Butcher's Ball, like presumably a Battle of Tumbleton, whether that's the first, the second, or they do it into some weird combination. Something will go down at Tumbleton this season. But yeah, the how of it all is kind of a mystery still at this point. So we will see as the show goes on.
Yes, and I feel like that's the most interesting part about Tumbleton. Almost a spoiler. There are multiple battles that happen there, and how the story is going. Like, I'm not sure, because I guess technically you can look at it like World War I, World War II. When World War I happened, no one knew there was going to be a World War II. What does a battle mean? Does them taking the city, does that technically constitute a fight or a battle that happened? Will the histories remember that as a battle, even though they just walked in and took over the whole thing? I don't know.
Yeah, that's always one of the interesting things that House of the Dragon does, because it's based on Fire and Blood, which is a fake history book. They do occasionally like to play with the how will history remember this of it all. And obviously in the book, the first Battle of Tumbleton is a very dramatic affair. There are 2 massive betrayals. The city gets more or less, I don't want to say completely destroyed, but it gets wrecked pretty bad. It gets occupied. It gets sacked. It's pretty brutal. We didn't really get any of that. So this is the thing that makes this complicated for people who haven't read the book or book readers, who I assume there are at least a few of you who are listening, is Tumbleton in the book. The Blacks control Tumbleton and the Greens are coming to take Tumbleton. And then the first Battle of Tumbleton happens. The show has reversed it, where Ormond Hightower has moved in and set up shop, and he's essentially daring Rhaenyra to come attack him there because they raised the banner for Rhaenyra in Tumbleton. So yeah, I imagine we haven't gotten the first battle because the betrayals haven't happened. But your guess is as good as mine. I don't know.
It's all a interesting kerfuffle that they have going on.
Yeah, it's true. So let me ask you here, because we've both read Fire and Blood, and I don't want to just totally harp on this episode as a book to screen thing. We try to kind of keep that reasonable so that if you haven't read Fire and Blood, you're not going to be like, oh, these guys just keep talking about this book. It's not the television show. We understand that. There's different mediums, different takes on this story. But something that stood out to me about this episode is I think this is one of the episodes that took the least, I think, from Fire and Blood of any of them. Like, yes, there's stuff happening in Tumbleton. Yes, is that Rhaenyra has to name a master of I'm like, what even else? It references small things a couple of times, like Alan and Paul saying, hey, let's get some cats, as a reference to a thing from Fire and Blood. But on the whole, this episode really breaks from the book almost completely in almost every plot line. Was that an issue at all for you, Mark?
No, because this is something that was always going to happen.
Yeah.
Things from that book, it mentions it in one paragraph, and you can't write a whole plot line based off that one paragraph. You can, and that's going to evolve this, where you have to fill in this plot lines. How do we move this, get this army to start moving from here to here? How do we get dragon riders moving? You have to, instead of somebody just dictating that to you in a history book, now we have to figure out like how does that happen?
Yeah, totally. And I think the show has kind of done it with varying degrees of success. And I feel like this episode really epitomizes that. So, like, you know, Hugh Hammer, his development, I think, is an area the show has really elevated what was there in the book, where Hugh is almost kind of a throwaway character who gets greedy. And the show has really humanized him in a way that is like, he's just like, bar none, a better character. You can't even really debate it too much. I think Aegon's storyline in this episode is kind of similar, where Aegon's entire story this season is stuff that was not in the book, because he basically vanishes for a while and then comes back much later. And we're kind of seeing what happened when he was off screen. Then there's some stuff that is in the book that they changed, like Tumbleton. And I think we have some different opinions, and I'm really excited to hear what you thought of our introduction to this new city, Tumbleton, and Ormond Hightower, who is setting up shop there, Lord of Old Town, with his ward, the real Daeron Targaryen. Let's start there. Did you enjoy it? What'd you think?
The redhead Targaryen.
Yeah.
You know what? I'm all on Team Green. I was happy to see someone doing some betrayals, someone trying to make a political move, and that was interesting. Still aligns with the book. We don't know what happened there, so this is that good spot where you can expand on a character, fill in the gaps. We know what Ormond wants now, and that is to possibly put Daeron on the Iron Throne under his own tutelage. Like he gets to be the one to raise this potential king, even though there are two other contenders in front of him. They're like, oh, what do you mean? At least on his side. So that's interesting. But I'm enjoying just seeing like what is his plot, what is his goal? Because if the goal is to put his nephew cousin on the Iron Throne, second cousin twice removed, what's he going to do with Vhagar? What was the plan? Because the whole time he wanted Vhagar to come down. So that just made me think of like, whoa, what was going to be your opportunity or your plot to kind of get rid of Aemon if the goal is to put Daeron on the Iron Throne?
Yeah, that's a really fair question, because the way it seems to be set up in the episode is it's not that he wants to betray Aemon right away, right? Like he wants Aemon to come there because their fortifications in the city won't hold without him. So now they're kind of stuck in Tumbleton. And if you missed this, so the reason that Ormond decided to take Tumbleton is because Alicent sent him a letter that she signed from Aemon saying, don't come to King's Landing, wait, and I'll join you in 3 days. That was that letter from Alicent at the beginning that if you stop and squint at it just right, you can kind of make out what it says. And then Aemon never shows because he went to Harrenhal, and so Ormond's just down there now. But yeah, I didn't really think about that. Like, what was his plan to get rid of Aemon, the single most dangerous dragon rider in the entire country at this point? I agree with you though. I do think Ormond, so he's played by James Norton from House of Guinness. I think he's really a much more interesting character. Ormond's another kind of like nothing character in Fire and Blood. You know, George R. Martin was not really very interested in Ormond Hightower. It's just he's the Hightower leading this army. He dies pretty quickly. Ormond dies in the first Battle of Tumbleton in the book, which I don't even feel is a spoiler to say because the setup is so different now. Because Ormond never makes it to Tumbleton in the book. He dies trying to take it. So obviously they're doing something different with Ormond Hightower. And I think they are adding some layers to him for sure. Some of them feel a little goofier to me than others, a little campier. I don't know how I feel about his sensitivity to smells being such a thing. I like it in his scenes. I thought it was kind of funny that Allison told Rhaenyra like he's got a sensitivity to smells, like it's like he's a video game boss and that's his weakness.
Yeah, I mean that's going to stand out. Like if you barely know someone, but the only thing you do is you see them always smelling. At first, I thought he was sniffing drugs. So, okay, turns out he's just sniffing perfume, some flowers he got crunched up. I'm like, okay, that's still cool. That would be something like you would always remember. Like, yeah, he just really loves smelling flowers and perfume all the time. So I'm like, yeah, that's I guess if you're gonna fight him, you're just gonna smear yourself in some feces and say, "Let's go." That'll stop him 100%.
The Winter Wolves are gonna roll in some mud and some gross shit, and then they're all gonna go raid Tumbleton, and he won't be able to take it, and he'll just fall off the battlement. So I'm curious where they're going with Ormond. I think obviously he's like the big new character of this season, and I do really want to see more of him. The one thing I didn't love about Ormond was his relationship with Darren. It's just way more abusive than I expected, you know, because we do hear a little bit about this in the book, and you know, Darren the Daring. Darren has this nickname he earns by doing a daring thing in a battle. I imagine they'll repurpose that somewhere because that battle already passed. Did that bother you that he's kind of like grooming Darren to be almost like a tyrant, like very much in a very similar way to Daemon handing, you know, Rhaenyra the Valyrian steel sword and saying, you've got to behead Otto Hightower. Ormond basically does the same thing here to Darren with just an innocent dude. What was your take on that?
I don't like that he did that, but I did just have an interesting character on the screen doing. It's okay for somebody to just be bad and evil and be like, oh, I can't believe he's doing this. Why? But I can see the purpose on why he's doing that evil thing. He wants to raise Daeron under his thumb to take the Iron Throne, but still be kind of subservient to him. He wants Daeron to like, hey, if I'm going to do any action, I need to go ask or get the opinion of Ormond Hightower. So he's trying to make sure he can maintain that level of control of this young Targaryen. Now, I didn't like how much he was talking about how much he kind of, you know, he despises Targaryens, and that does come up in the previous show, Night of the Seven Kingdoms, how much they don't like them. You brought this. The only thing that gets you that power is because you have dragons. You brought what they think of as these false gods with this dark magic here. And like they don't like that. They don't like how House Targaryen take control. So how are they going to do that? They kind of infiltrated House Targaryen. Was this the long play? Probably not really. Maybe so. We do see that Otto Hightower was corresponding later in the episode with Ormond Hightower, but Ormond never wrote back. And I'm like, was that part of the plan? Where you're just trying to send him messages to prepare a backup just in case Aegon turned out not to be the best choice? Because Otto's not a dumb person. He probably realized, like, this grandson probably didn't turn out the best, but I got a backup who's maybe a little crazy. Let's see how he does, and keep a third backup way over there in the old town.
Yeah, it's interesting because it almost feels like Otto and Ormond's goals here were similar but slightly different, because it does seem like Ormond really wants the downfall of House Targaryen is the way they're painting him. He really despises them. And I like that there was that little bit of texture that Orwyle gives to Rhaenyra about that Ormond never replied to Otto. He basically ruled Old Town almost like a kingdom in itself. And part of that is because the High Towers were ruling Old Town for like centuries before Aegon's conquests. So there is this feeling that they, they were a mighty house who was taken under House Targaryen's rule, which is very different than like, the Tullys who were elevated because the Targaryens conquered Westeros. So yeah, Otto had always felt like he wanted his blood on the throne, right? Like he didn't want to just be a shadow ruler. He wanted to kind of get his bloodline in there. And Ormond is just more concerned with getting the Targaryens out, it seems like. Which is, there is that sticking point of the king he's trying to raise is a Targaryen. How is that gonna work?
Yeah, in blood and in name. It's not just like, hey, I'm a high tower that has a dragon. It's like, no, I have the name Targaryen. If I assume the Iron Throne, it would be as a Targaryen.
Yeah, totally. And he'd have a dragon, and they're not treating, or I should say Ormond's not treating Darren's dragon Tessarion very nicely. So Tessarion is chained up in the Sept. There are no dragon keepers to take care of them because we found out last episode the High Towers killed almost all the dragon keepers who were presumably taking Tessarion back to King's Landing. They killed them. They took Tessarion to Tumbleton. And yeah, he's telling Daeron, like, don't get attached to that beast. So I don't know how that's going to work. If it's going to be a test, like, can you kill Tessarion or something to become king? And I don't know. I'm nervous. I'm nervous for poor Daeron, who really is not in quite as good of a position as, Gwaine Hightower made it sound like to Alicent last season.
And it could be one of those things where the face that Ormond shows to the people is not the face he shows in private. Obviously,
totally.
Yeah, Daeron, and I can't remember the Ormond's best buddy,
John Roxton. Bold John Roxton.
Like they immediately knew, like, hey, he's gonna have one of his temper tantrums right now. Let's the prince gave an order to the young man and the attendant lady. You guys need to leave while he figures out his emotions right now. You can tell a lot by a person by how they deal with their emotions. So I think that tells us a lot about his character.
Yeah, totally. Kind of, an interesting parallel there with Rhaenyra in the season premiere, because she also had an emotional outburst where she was stabbing a table. Ormond slicing a table with a sword, Rhaenyra stabbing her dress on a table. And in both instances, they had retainers in the room with them who were just like, okay, we'll kind of wait in the background cringing till you're done. So I didn't expect them to draw this parallel of, presumably like pressures of leadership, they're feeling out of control, these sorts of things. But I do wonder what they're going to do with like Ormond as a foil for Rhaenyra, right? When she thinks she's really won the war, this guy comes in and they maybe have a little bit more in common than they think. Yeah, definitely interesting stuff. So let me ask you about Tumbleton in general, which we're talking about Tumbleton quite a bit because it took up quite a bit of the episode. This is really like the big introduction for the next major front of this civil war. So in the book, the Greens take Tumbleton in the first Battle of Tumbleton. Then they sack the city and do a bunch of awful stuff to the people there. It's like one of the worst sacks in Westeros' history. Here, the Greens take it bloodlessly, and they still are pretty awful occupying the city. Did that work for you? And what were your thoughts on how they handled yet another sexual assault scene, this time for Hugh Hammer's wife, who thankfully she gets out of it, but not great stuff.
It cost her brother's life, unfortunately. This wasn't for me a negative or a positive. It was like when I saw it, it's okay. Obviously, they're gonna. Anytime you have a sitting army in any fantasy or any television show, bad things happen. So I know the whole time I was waiting for it. I'm like, okay, the Green Army is not going to be nice to these people, not going to be kind, sees them as lesser than already, and that they're under them for taking the Team Black side. So it wasn't a bad thing. Well, it was a bad thing. They were bad people, but I was like, okay, yeah. What did you think of them occupying the city?
I like the occupation. I like the idea of them going and living in houses. Like,
Hmm.
that's an interesting kind of different sort of way to tackle this idea of the Green Army is there and it's not good for the people there. Um, I didn't like that they just immediately resorted to another sexual assault scene, because that makes it, if we're counting Aemond, which I do count Aemond kissing Allison in this same vein because it's a non-consensual thing being done on to a person. Um, that's like 3 out of 4 episodes have a scene like this, and,
Hmm.
and it feels like it's something they're falling back on. Not to say that they need to supremely justify every instance of this in a show like this that is like a medieval fantasy where these sorts of things happen, but I feel like they're using it to drive plot in a little bit of a lazy way. So I hope that, you know, we see a little bit more creativity in the situations they use to push some of these ideas forward, rather than just resorting to those sorts of scenes over and over again. Um, but I did think it was really interesting that Ormond punished that dude, and then turned around and had Darren kill Hugh's brother-in-law, because it is like, at first I was like, man, that's a weird choice, but like thinking about it, I'm like, all right, he had to punish the dude to put order into his men, but he also wanted to punish the guy who fought back, because fighting back is laying hands on an extension of the crown, and Darren needs that lesson. um so yeah, I think pluses and minuses for me
Hmm.
with Ormond, with that whole plot line. Love the actors. Really need to see more to like make up my mind about it though.
Yeah, because when as soon as I saw how that green soldier was looking at Hugh's wife, I'm like, are they gonna do a scene where he tries to assault her? And I'm like, they did do a scene where she tried to assault
Yep,
her. Like you said, maybe there's a different, more creative way they can do it. Like you don't have to show them doing or almost assaulting somebody to show me that they're bad. Like I'm already assuming
exactly.
that. Yeah, this.
Yeah, yeah, totally. And I don't know off the top of my head what they could do instead, but I think that it will behoove them to do a little bit of variety here, because there are more ways people can be bad than just
Hmm.
that. And like, that was an interesting thing of them moving into the house. Like, they could have been an inconvenience and been pretty awful even before that happened. Like, are they eating all their food? Are they breaking their stuff? Are they taking total advantage of guests? Right? Like, I think there are ways to explore this, because again, they're not sacking the city here. That's the major difference from the book, where it does explicitly say these sorts of things happened in like the most horrific way possible. They were sacking the city. Here, Ormond wants control of the city. Very, very different. um but yeah, I'm curious to see how they navigate this going forward, because um it's so hard, because I want to talk spoilers for the first battle of Tumbleton, because they've set Hugh up very differently here. And Kat, his wife, is in Tumbleton. The Greens control Tumbleton. How does the major reversal in, the battle happen? Is he going to get blackmailed? Like, it's just a totally different situation. Do you think
Yeah,
they'll have to change that in some major ways?
I, I want to know how the reveal is going to happen. That who are even these dragon riders? Who knows about these new dragon, like who they actually are? Because somebody says, "Hey, there's a guy named Hugh Hammer." Will she? If she, what are the chances she would ever hear that name at this juncture in the war? Of course, the higher ups will, the lords across Westeros will maybe hear about Hugh, but and Ulf and Adam as well. But if no one, who's going to be spreading the rumor that to even know that he's on the dragon? Is what I guess I'm trying to say.
Yeah, that's definitely a fair question. I'm waiting for that reveal. And
Yeah.
and I don't know if they're going to actually give it to us, or if they're going to do one of those classic Game of Thrones near misses where she almost finds out and dies or something, because we've seen 2 shots now of her seeing Vermithor flying over King's Landing and then Tumbleton, and in both instances she doesn't know that's her husband on that dragon. So yeah, I am excited to see what they do with that. I think what they've done with Hugh has me really looking forward to Tumbleton. But yeah, lots of stuff in the air there.
Yeah.
Any more Tumbleton stuff you want to say before, because we got other places to visit?
um, I I'm just really I am interested on how the Green Army is going to interact with the marketplace, because I guess when I read George R. R. Martin and all his other works, he always talks about these encampments, but to actually just have the soldiers in the city, living amongst the people in a city they're occupying, it's going to be really interesting just to see how the resources are going to be divvied up amongst the people. And I think that's going to be a great way just to show how they are slowly rotting that city away and taking all the resources. Kind of what happened, almost a blockade into itself, because it's a trading center of that
Yeah.
area. Who's going to want to come there and try to trade? It'll just get taken up by Team Green no matter what you bring to that city.
Yeah, totally. That is definitely a hit to Rhaenyra in that way. You know, she's looking for money and resources close at hand. Tumbleton is like a really rich city, which you wouldn't know from Game of Thrones, because Tumbleton doesn't ever really recover from what we're going to see happen to it in the next, few weeks. But yeah, that definitely is a sticky situation. Rhaenyra, so in King's Landing, Rhaenyra is advised to, like, don't send your dragons there, because you can't burn this city because it's your own people who live there, who swore for you, who raised their banner against the Greens and then got captured. So I think is it Orwyle who suggests send your Riverlands army. They're already marching to King's Landing. They could just march a little farther to Tumbleton. So presumably late in the season, we're going to see some stuff with the Winter Wolves at Tumbleton and that whole army, but it'll be weeks. So we'll see what happens to Tumbleton in that time.
Yeah, shout out to Grandmaster Orwell coming up with all these strategies, trying to help Team Black any way he can. Really, one of the secret MVPs so far of this season. Just like, I can make myself useful to anybody's side. Why don't you just, like you said, navigate that army down there, blockade the city, force them to come out, essentially.
Yeah, totally. And I like that Orwyle has this bigger role. Like, he's pretty much immediately removed in the book after Rhaenyra takes King's Landing, and she puts her own maester in charge. And instead they decided, like, we like this actor, let's keep Orwyle around. And I think it's a solid choice. He's definitely been interesting as the dude who is almost getting beheaded every other episode, but somehow still being really useful and sticking around. So before we get into the weeds in King's Landing, there's another piece of the puzzle that factors into King's Landing we need to talk about, which is Daemon's trip to the Vale. So he has a meeting with Jane Eyre. She kind of scoffs at him being there. Love the open disdain she has for Daemon, because remember, these characters have history, because Daemon used to be married to Rhea Royce, whom in the show he murdered to get out of the marriage because he just didn't really like her very much. And that gives him a very unsavory reputation in the Vale. Like, he is not well regarded there. And Jane Eyre really looks down her nose at him and then is like, oh, I could just give you gold and you'll leave? You're here begging? Great. You can go. And then after that, Caraxes kind of decides to go off on his own and leads Daemon to a cave with another dragon in it. So let's start with the Vale. What do you think of Jane Eyre? Finally getting some screen time here.
Yeah, she's definitely got a lot more this season. And I know it had to feel good for her just to kind of tell Daemon off, be the superior in this situation. This man's flown all the way here to beg for gold, and she didn't have to risk any of her own troops at this moment. Like, hey, you'll take this gold and leave, and I don't have to risk any of my own army. Like, bet. That sounds like a good choice.
Yeah, totally. The Vale has been pretty shrewd throughout this, but at the same time, so is Rhaenyra, right? Like, in my opinion, Jane Eyre's pretty much in the right here. Do you think that?
Yeah, you were promised a dragon, and you sent the only dragon that's still there was your son, who had a dragon's barely big enough for him to ride, it seems like, in the television show. So what was that going to do if a real dragon rider came here? Vagar's somewhere lurking, and Joffrey Valerian, I wasn't going to do anything about that.
Nope, he was not. So yeah, that's I think Jane Eyre it's pretty fair for her to, she said, I should send babes to go fight. You want soldiers. I do think it's kind of funny that, like, Liza Aaron is the last Aaron, head of the Aarons that we saw in Game of Thrones, and she had a very dysfunctional relationship with her son Robin Aaron in the show. And we don't have anything quite that egregious here in House of the Dragon, but I did chuckle at like Jane Aaron, like with her bunch of dogs up by the throne. Like, all right, the Aarons are quirky and they've got little things they keep around them on the throne. Fine.
It's that high altitude that messes with your head.
Yeah, right. The veil's impregnable. No one gets in. Sanity does not get in either. So yeah, love Jane Aaron. I really love. I know I said this last week or the week before. Amanda Collin, who plays Jane Aaron from Raised by Wolves, love seeing more of her. She's a phenomenal actress. And incredible costuming. I feel like Jane Aaron has some of the best costumes of the season so far.
That's where the money went. It went to her, right? And the armors definitely improved. I don't know if it looks different this season for everyone.
Ormans does.
Yes, yeah. I got all that money in the Reach and all that money in the Veil. They said, "Hey, we're going all out." Definitely her dress armored outfit peak.
Yep.
Peak for the
someone who doesn't have great a great costume, and by this I don't mean that the costuming is bad. I mean their clothes are not very sound for protecting them from the elements, is Rhaena Targaryen, who Daemon finds in a cave. Caraxes, really, really cool scene, I thought, of Caraxes just going off doing his own thing. Daemon kind of smacks him like you would a dog, and he's like, hey, calm down, and Caraxes just goes anyway, because he smelled the other dragon, Sheep Stealer, nearby in a cave. And then Daemon, forced to come face-to-face with Rhaena and realize she's the one who was riding Sheep Stealer, who inadvertently caused Jace's death in the season premiere. And Rhaena asks him to lie to Rhaenyra and say that's not her, couldn't be found. What are your thoughts on this? Because obviously we've talked about Nettles before. This is Rhaena is fully off book. They didn't even do Sheep Stealer's rider from the book. What'd you make of this whole thing?
I definitely like the scene of Caraxes going to find her. I know most likely it sensed the other dragon, but I like to deep down believe that he also sensed Rhaena out there too. It's like,
oh, nice.
There's something about that's familiar. I think we want to go over there. That's something connected to you, big guy Daemon. We gotta figure this out. So it's definitely a cool scene of just seeing her in the cave, because we see Sheep Stealer start breathing a little fire, and you see her outline, and we're like, there she goes right there. Please don't burn her down, evil dragon. And him to see his baby girl. She's like, oh, what are you doing? He's like, you gotta go. You gotta come back. You have to go to Rhaenyra and ask for forgiveness. Like, just stop this. Leave this dragon there. And I like that. She says, no, I'm not gonna abandon Sheep Stealer. Like, I've been feed him or her big old sheep. And that's where I want to. I'm not gonna leave. I'm gonna stay here.
Yeah, totally. I think, I'm at peace with the Nettles of it all. I think at this point, do I wish we had Nettles? Sure, but it's Rhaena is very much like her own storyline, and I do kind of think she's gonna basically go off the radar at this point. I wouldn't be surprised to see the name Nettles used somewhere for her at some point this season. And then after the war, she will just pop back up as Rhaena, because Rhaena has things to do at the end of the war, in the book at least. So she's got a really interesting story, and I love this scene, that for Matt Smith and Phoebe Campbell. I think it's some of Phoebe Campbell's probably best acting in the show. That whole speech about Rhaena, the least of your children type thing, to Daemon, was really good. The only thing that made me chuckle is her hair, just because she's been gone for like 4 days. It seems like time has passed, but like we had the 3 days of Rhaenyra controlling King's Landing, and like she presumably got there a day or two before that. So it's like Rhaena's been living in a cave for like less than a week, and she looks this haggard. Is a little funny to me, but overall, I really like that scene.
Yeah, I'm like, why would you immediately cut your hair? Did it burn off from the fire? You said, oh, well, let me chop off the rest. The only thing I could think of. And I did like her just asking her dad, like, I need you to look out for me this one time. I've never asked for anything. And you can kind of see him reflect on that, like, oh, maybe it's something he never really considered that he did. He was treating her differently than the other
Yeah,
children because she didn't have an active dragon at that time. And
absolutely.
it was good to see the father in him say, I gotta protect my little girl.
Yeah, man, I've been waiting for some scenes of Daddy Damon actually being a father. I feel like the show has really not given us much of that at all. Like literally, I don't think he's had a single scene with Raina or Bela as the adult actors, as Bethany Antonia and Phoebe Campbell. So like, loved this scene for him. Loved Damon having to face, here's one of my children actually in like real danger. Like, she could die. She's here with a wild dragon. If I bring her back to King's Landing to my wife, her stepmother, she's probably going to want her dead anyway. Or she might, and Damon doesn't know enough to trust whether Rhaenyra would or not. Now, here's a big question for you. So, in the book, there's this whole thing with Nettles hanging around with Damon a lot. Rhaenyra gets paranoid and orders the death of Nettles. And Damon finds out, and then he goes and does a fateful thing for Damon. But that whole storyline revolves around Rhaenyra getting paranoid. Whether the paranoia is justified or not, the book doesn't really confirm. Here, Damon starts this thing by lying to her and saying he kills this shepherd he saw, and then brings the skull back unrecognizable to Rhaenyra and says, I killed Sheep Stealer's rider. It's done. And Rhaenyra is just like, I wanted to be the one to do it. I wanted to look upon him. Who was he? And Damon's like, I don't know, some guy. So do you think him lying undermines that paranoia? Because she'll be justified at this point.
No, I think it's going to be a different paranoia. Like, I think we're still going to get it. It definitely seems like this is going to be something that comes back to bite him in the bum. Totally. Mysaria has already called it out. She's like, I know you're lying about something. This was just too clean. This is not what Damon does. Everything he does is a little messy. So, especially if maybe I can see maybe if he does go off on his own, maybe he does reconnect with Raina and Sheep Stealer, and that could cause tension. It's like she'll get reports that he's out there with another dragon rider potentially.
Yep.
Who's
with a woman dragon rider. Yeah.
So if nobody knows who's on Sheep Stealer, that it'll just bring a different level of tension than we got in the book.
Yeah, totally. And Mysaria is still positioned to be the person who kind of stokes that paranoia, because she's the one who immediately clocks, oh, that's not who Damon says it is, which I liked. I really liked that Mysaria just immediately is like, nah, I know you, Damon. I know that's not who you're saying. So
I will say, boo for killing an innocent sheep herder. Yay for protecting your daughter, because he was a witness to what just happened.
That is such a Daemon Targaryen thing. And sorry, sheep herder, but also it's nice to have Daemon back being Daemon, where even when he's doing a good thing, he's doing it in a bad way. So that's his blessing and his curse. We love him for it, but yeah, he murdered an innocent dude and lied to his wife. Probably not gonna end well for him. Yeah, not the best. So another thing that was interesting that we got in King's Landing with Rhaenyra is they appointed a new master of coin, and they did this. Mysaria pitches it to Rhaenyra. It's a good episode for Mysaria. She's got a lot of good scenes here. She pitches it to Rhaenyra as, people will eventually find out you're broke. You might as well appoint a master of coins so they can pin it on him instead. And she immediately is like, hey, Torrin Manderly is interesting. Why don't we get that guy?
As soon as I saw his face in the last episode, I'm like, okay, he's a jovial fella. He's gonna take the place of the role that Celtigar was supposed to be from Fire and Blood, and it happened. I guess I'm psychic.
Yeah, totally. I had a feeling too that they were gonna involve him more. He is kind of an advisor to Rhaenyra. In the book, but I don't think he really has a small council position that I remember. So you're right. It is a condensing of, they got rid of Bartimos Celtigar. Now they've got Torrin Manderly there. I like the actor. We only get a little bit of him joking around, Damon being like, I'm the clever one here, Manderley. And he's like, okay, sure. If you say so. Have we considered taxing the populace? So yeah, he probably will still be fairly unpopular. I feel like they are setting that up.
Yeah.
But I assume we'll get more of him in the coming weeks. And this is really the setup for that.
Yeah, he it seems like a smart enough character to know, like, hey, we're out of money. I'm gonna have to do things to get money, and people aren't gonna like that. But the good thing about being the man that pays everyone, that eventually, you can enrich yourself a little bit, and maybe you can get a couple people on your side. So we'll see if he's the man to do that.
Yeah, totally. Rhaenyra's small council goes through a bit of upheaval this episode because that happens. So Damon's lying to her. She says, Orwell, you can stay and hang because you're being kind of useful. Torrin Manderley joins. Corlys Valerian taps out. He's just like, nah, I'm not going to do it right now. I'm going to go hunt some pirates. And he says he has Alan of Hull kind of sit in for him on the small council. And we get some pretty cool scenes with Alan of Hull in this episode. I really loved the scene of his first one with Rhaenyra, where she's looking at Viserys's model of old Valyria, and Alan comes in and they kind of talk about fathers. And then Alan suggests the cats, which love. I hope we get the Red Keep full of cats, please. Did you? I can't remember whether this happened or not in the book. I don't think it matters too much, but did you like this for Alan and Corlys?
It seemed like a bold move, and I'm pretty sure this
Corlys
did not
has
happen
no
in the
shits
books.
left to give.
No. What's she gonna do to him? Oh,
yeah.
I'm gonna go off. I'm gonna do a little adventure real quick. He needs to clear his mind and get himself ready for whatever is to come. Understand that to leave your son there as a proxy for the small council, I don't think that that should fly. Like, what? How is he going to benefit the small council whatsoever? He already says, like, I don't really have that much of a political mind, or I haven't been raised in that way. Does that mean he can't do it? No. Is right now the time to prove he can do it? I wouldn't risk that right now. He just found out he was a heir to the Lord like 2 seconds ago. Let's find somebody else in the small council that may have just a little bit more experience in not only running a city, but trying to run a kingdom or just under wartime in general.
Yeah. I do think it's kind of a canny move from Corlys to do it this way, where Rhaenyra refused to legitimize Alan and Adam. So Corlys says, I'm just going to go leave for a while. In my power as hand, I'm going to put the guy you refuse to legitimize, who I want to be my heir, he's going to serve you directly on your small council. He'll have a chance to learn. You'll have a chance to get to know him and realize you messed up. And I'll also stick it to you because you really need seasoned advisors right now, and I'm going to give you a newbie. And this is the slightest passive aggressive way I could do that while still serving you well. Complicated move from Corlys. I really like. That's one of the things I probably liked the most in the King's Landing section of this episode.
And that's a good point. Her forcing her to realize her mistake, but you're really putting your son in a predicament, because if he doesn't learn fast in this realm, bad things happen. I guess we'll see how much power he's even allowed to have in the small council room.
Yeah, totally. That is totally a question. I mean, I feel like he's already, Alan, he's a pretty reserved character. I feel like he's not going to be talking out of his ass. He's kind of probably going to give her suggestions when he's got good suggestions and be quiet when he doesn't, because he's a soldier, and that's kind of the mindset he's got versus all the nobles who, are all about the small talk in the small council. But we'll see. I'm excited to see how that goes. Another thing that happens in King's Landing, there are actually two more. I forgot to write one on our outline here, so I'm going to surprise you and toss that out at you next. Interesting scene with Alicent and Helena. What did you make of that scene?
That's a good point. I really think just Alicent is kind of lost her daughter. She's made a lot of bad moves, and I don't think her daughter is in the headspace to really just pay her any mind. I think she's just in her own world, just trying to run away from her.
Yeah. Did you clock that Helena is pregnant?
You know what? I did not clock that.
So I will not lie. I did not. So I've seen the episode twice at this point. I didn't clock it on my first time. I don't even know that I would have clocked it on my second time, but I can confirm from basically, the notes for this screener that Helena is pregnant. So that is, we can confirm that is what that scene was trying to convey. They didn't really convey it super clearly. I don't think it was just like Allison kind of being like, your stomach, like with her hand, but she is pregnant. That is what that scene was conveying.
That makes way more sense. I thought she was just being reserved, and Helena was like just trying to stay away from her mother, but to say she's possibly pregnant, I guess if she is, I guess George R. Martin was wrong. They were able to fit that last kid in almost, kind of.
Yeah, so this is an interesting thing. I've been thinking about this. Do you think he was wrong, or do you think they changed course after that whole Maylor kerfuffle where he basically called the writers out on Maine on his blog and said they're cutting this kid that they told me they were going to leave in, and then they showed me their outline for the season and he wasn't there, and I'm really unhappy about it. Do you think they backtracked?
100%. They were like,
I think so too.
Yeah, I'm gonna fit this. And the same thing I feel about the character like Daeron Targaryen. I think that was
totally.
They were gonna cut him. They were gonna cut him. They were always. They might not even had Nettles' plot in there to the extent they have it now. So it was a lot of things that they were like, I guess we probably should add that. Probably a lot of pressure from George. And I never say listen to the internet too much, but that doesn't mean the internet is always wrong.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. And George is not the internet. You can listen to George R. R. Martin when he tells you, hey, I put this thing in there for a reason, and if you take it out, the story is not going to work as well. And so Maylor, they're going to presumably do very differently because Helena might give birth, and then I guess something will happen to the infant, and that will be really bad and sad, and she will get very upset about that, and stuff will happen. I'm assuming we're going to see that late this season, but yeah, I think they backtracked. But yeah, Helena Targaryen is pregnant, so probably not going to end well.
Yeah. I don't know how they get there to the plot for the storyline for Maylor. If they are able to get there, that'll be a sight to hopefully not completely see. Y'all keep that behind a screen.
Yeah, totally. I don't know that they'll get all the way to Bitterbridge because they'd have to introduce a whole new location. And I think this show has been a little conservative with like introducing totally new locations when they don't need to. But I could see something happening during the riots in King's Landing or something. I don't know. Even though those technically happen after Helena does what she does. So we'll see. But yeah, I thought that was pretty interesting and not super clear in the episode. I was preparing to write about this, and I was reading some stuff. So here's another one, if I'm unfrozen enough to ask you.
Yes.
So the last King's Landing thing to touch on here. Ulf and Hugh requests to go keep vigil. He's kind of very honorable about it, and Rhaenyra's like, yeah, go do it over Tumbleton because his wife's there. Ulf wants pardons for his drinking buddies, and Rhaenyra says you're not allowed to go to the bar anymore. Mistake?
Yeah, well, I want to say it's a mistake. Is it a smart move because you only have a certain amount of dragon riders, you can't risk them out and about, even though that's where Ulf came from. Those are his buddies. These are the streets that made Ulf the man he is right now, helped him become the dragon rider Rhaenyra needs. That's the best beer in King's Landing. He needs to go out there. But no, that was a smart choice from Rhaenyra, telling him you can't go out and about into to any streets.
Yeah, I
He's too
mean,
important to the cause.
yeah, Rainier is not wrong in saying you could just so easily get knifed in the stomach and no one would know, and I'd be down a dragon, and that's a huge loss for me. At the same time, Ulf being like, "What? I can't go to the tavern anymore." Um, they've definitely played up this idea of the blacks mistreating the dragon seeds this season.
Yeah.
I feel like almost every scene they're kind of treating the dragon seeds like dirt, and that is absolutely going to backfire this season. So this is just one more instance where one day Ulf will decide he wants to go to a tavern, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah. We might shouldn't let him drink too much. Hopefully not.
Yeah, Ulf the Sot. The last section of this episode that I want to talk to you about is Egon. Egon and Laris go to Rook's Rest. This is totally new from the book. I think it's awesome. They go. Egon really wants to see Sunfire's corpse. He hugs it. They almost get killed because he's hugging it, and people want to charge him to hug it. And he is like, "He's alive. He's alive." Do you think Sunfire's alive, Mark?
I mean, the bond between a dragon and a dragon rider, we don't 100% understand. Is it possible? I think it's a good chance.
Yeah, I'd be shocked. I think we've said this before here. I know we've said it on winterscoming.net in articles. Killing off Sunfire early would be the single biggest divergence this show has made from the book, because Sunfire has some really important stuff to do near the end of this war. Like, absolutely crucial character. Don't know what they do if Sunfire is not on the board, but they're playing this very long game of trying to convince us all that Sunfire could be dead. And here we get a glimpse that he might not be, because Egon, like you said, he's got that bond. I love that, Egon, for as flawed of a person as he is, they've really established that well. You can't deny that he has like one of the most genuine, heartfelt bonds with his dragon out of any of the people we've seen. Like, he loves this dragon like he would love a dog, Yeah,
you could definitely just his relationship, how he just ran up to his dragon dad. It was like, I need to be next to them. I just want to feel them, and to see that he's feeling some type of presence coming from Sunfire. I'm like, all right, man, maybe the dragon can pop back up, even though they haven't eaten in probably, what has it been, a month or at least 2 or 3 weeks since they got burnt up. I don't know about timelines.
Yeah, at least a few weeks. I mean, presumably not that long. The timeline is definitely a little wonky in terms of how much time has passed, because in the last episode, the High Septon said it had only been a few months since Egon got crowned, and that was the episode 9 of season 1. So we're talking like a couple months from the end of season 1 to now. But yeah, I mean, we do see another dragon this episode when Egon and Laris actually go to Rook's Rest, which is Maylis, whose body is just rotting on the wall of Rook's Rest in noticeably worse condition, I thought, than Sunfire. Aside from that missing head, like the body itself had like holes in it and stuff.
So kind of leading quick credence, because if that dragon is rotting and has been dead for the same amount of time, and you can see the decaying holes, as Sunfire still completely intact, injured, yes,
yeah,
but no new wounds that you can see since sitting there.
Yeah, presumably he's not smelling. Like a dead thing rotting smells pretty bad. Presumably he would smell if he was rotting, and Rook's Rest probably just does not smell very good.
That's what we needed, somebody to bring up how bad it smells. Or I guess you get nose blind to it. I mean, if you're living under a dead dragon, it's like, what do you even smell? Does it smell like sulfur? I don't know.
Someone get Ormond in there. Ormond Hightower to tell us.
It's only weakness.
Yeah. So yeah, Egon goes to Rook's Rest. He meets Tom Tangletongue and a few other people. He's pretty much immediately humiliated. He has to kiss this dude's boot after almost getting shanked in the belly for mouthing off to him. He has to pick up poop from the latrine. How'd you feel about Egon's storyline here?
See, I thought this was a very fun storyline. in any other show, this will be a king or ruler who was kicked out, and now they have to rise back up, and now he's amongst the people, living as the lowest low. He's basically separating shit and urine, kissing somebody's boot. What's going to be his next move? Can the king rise back up? So does that mean we're all rooting for Aegon right now?
I guess. I mean, honestly, the most out of pretty much anyone in this episode. Yeah, I kind of am, you know, because the main thing I'm rooting for Aegon for isn't even just get back on the throne. It's like, you know, get back to a better position for yourself, get your dragon back, you know, get back to a place where you're not like fearing for your life every day on the road. Like like Aegon is the total underdog at the moment for both the greens and the blacks. Like they all assume he's either dead or he may as well be dead. They all assume his dragon's dead. So, you know, everybody loves the underdog, and they've really done a good job of making Aegon the underdog now. And yeah, I mean, I really liked it. It's a little, I don't want to say predictable, but kind of the trope you'd expect almost a little bit, like king in exile has to kiss the boot of a commoner, like that sort of built back down to rock bottom and then built back up. I feel like it's kind of a typical plot that you would do with a ruler in exile, but at the same time, it is because it's so compelling. And I think Aegon, who is arrogant as hell, it works. It really works for his character. So, yeah, I guess I'm Team Aegon now. I don't. Whew.
Hey, let me change my. Where's my thing? Let me change my lights to green so we can represent
Nice.
Aegon. There we go.
Nice. Yeah, he'll get those banners back up there at some point. Yeah. So did we forget anything? Is there anything else you want to mention for this episode? Because as we do, we've talked for about the length of the episode because there was a lot to talk about.
Sorry, let me look at my long list of notes. Oh, real, we did not quickly talk about Harrenhal. I don't think so.
Oh yeah, Harrenhal. There's so much that I was like, Harrenhal's in this episode? Yeah, totally. Kristen Cole goes to Harrenhal with Gwaine.
Yeah.
They meet Alice Rivers. She says Aegon's not here, his dragon's not here, or Aemon's rather. Aemon's not here. Vhagar's not here. Hang out in my spooky castle. And Gwaine wants to go meet up with Ormond. Kristen basically says, now we're going to do a suicide march, slowing down this army that's 20 times our size to make it take longer for them to get to Tumbleton. Thoughts?
Yeah, Gwaine definitely had the smart decision. That was the smart thing to do. Hey, let's regroup and let's just march. Try to our army's smaller, so we can probably outmarch the Winterwolves and the Riverlanders and make it down to Gwaine, fortify our army, get behind the castle wall amongst friends, and actually have a chance to win if Aemon actually shows up. He does the opposite, as Kristen Cole tends to do. Every time he comes up with a plan, typically a bad plan, unless somebody else is involved. So are they going to try to just pick away at the Winterwolves? Yes. Is that a horrible plan? Yes. And I just quickly want to say, where's Vhagar at? How they go missing?
Yeah.
The Woods Witch. Oh, that's the last time we saw him. He was getting taken care of by her, and now he's that was only the day before, and now he was almost dying.
Yeah.
But now he's able to fly Vhagar. That's feeling a little bit like what's my name? Khal Drogo. The mountain type thing. We're making a zombie man that's listening to all our directions.
I have a feeling. So I've been thinking about this too, because like Vhagar's a real big dragon to just be hiding, you know. My theory here is Aemon's still in Harrenhal. He's in the castle somewhere. She's just got him in some room they wouldn't look in because it's essentially her castle. No one knows it like her. And she's taking care of him and whatever. I think she somehow convinced Vhagar, because she's a witch. She can maybe talk to the dragon a little bit to go to the Isle of Faces, because I didn't clock this on my first watch of the premiere, but that's where the dragon seeds are, is the Isle of Faces in the middle of the God's Eye Lake. And Alice is there and she tells them go to the gullet and whatever. So it stands to reason that maybe she's got Vhagar hiding out on that island. And that's how Kristen and Gwaine didn't see her, because there are only so many places a dragon that big can hide, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, God's Eye super big. So if you got even though the dragon's big, like you said, if they're laying on the island, it's like that's kind of hard to see depending on where you are at that lake.
Yeah, totally. So that's my theory. We'll see. I imagine, Aemond was not in this episode at all. We're now halfway through the season. Aemond has been in very little of it. He's had a couple of scenes, one really good one, the raid on Harrenhal, but only a handful. So I assume we'll get plenty of him next episode. How'd you feel about Kristen's decision to march and slow the Winter Wolves down? Because that's almost kind of the opposite of what happens in the book, where the Winter Wolves are slowing Kristen down.
They're ambushing them, kind of like you said, a reverse of tactics.
Yeah,
I think it, even though it's a reverse, I think he did a good job just showing Kristen Cole making what we all think is not the correct decision. Looking at it outright, it'll be smarter for him to regroup with that other bigger army and be with them for what could be a final assault, give them the best chance to win. This way, I mean, you're just really setting yourself up. It's a bad decision, and I think his army may pay the price for that.
Yeah, I think you're right. I don't think there's any chance that it ends well for Kristen and his army. I am curious what will happen with Gawain, because he's another character who's totally off book. He dies in the Fall of King's Landing in the book, so they're doing something totally different with Gawain, which I kind of like. I've enjoyed Freddie Fox's Gawain. I like seeing more of him. And I did like, the shift in Kristen's attitude, Fabian Frankel kind of playing that as, there's no dragons. Our fight won't be on whatever he says. It won't be honorable, but it'll be clean or something. Like it'll just be man to man in the forest. No dragons. How exciting to just have a regular war to do. So yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens with Kristen in the coming weeks, and with Aemond and Alice Rivers, but only a little bit of them this week, and I think that's okay.
Yeah, more Kristen Cole. I think that's what we're all waiting for.
Yeah, I think so. I think episode 5 or 6, the latest, we're going to see things come to a head with Kristen and his army. But yeah, so that's episode 4. Any closing thoughts for this one?
Was it my favorite episode of the season? No, I'm still going to go with episode 3 of this season as my top episode. But this is definitely this is definitely a interesting. For me, definitely felt like that mid-season finale. Like a lot of things left on that cliffhanger, but setting up so many future plots. It's like, oh, okay, now what's going to happen? So definitely gave me that good solid TV feel of things being wrapped up in the episode, but able to expand onto greater plots and everything set up for what we're going to see.
Yeah, totally agree with that. I 3 is my favorite. I think out of the first 4, this might be my least favorite, honestly.
No.
I like it more on my second watch. I really struggled with the Ormond and Darren dynamic my first watch, because I just didn't love it. And it's very, very different than like the kind of like nice honorable relationship they have in the book, to be like, here's this super dysfunctional thing. But on the rewatch, I appreciate it a lot more. And if you listening are just coming off of your first watch and you're like, what the hell did I just, that's not what's in Fire and Blood, give it a second watch, because you'll probably like it a lot more. And James Norton as Ormond is just, he's having a great time. So yeah, I agree with you. This was a good halfway points, good leave off for the rest of the season, and we will be talking about it every week here on Take the Black, Sunday nights directly after the episode of House of the Dragon airs. We'll be writing about this pretty much every day at winteriscoming.net. Mark, where are you at, Mark, that people can find you talking about this stuff?
You can go to all those cool social media places, especially TikTok. You can search me at House of Nettles, House_of_Nettles. You see this face in the right place. Also on Instagram and YouTube as well.
And yeah, make sure to hit like, subscribe, find Mark, like and subscribe, follow. And until next time, we will see you in Westeros for more House of the Dragon. Take care, all.